Hi everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Patty Montoya and I'll be your moderator today from the Early Growth Financial Service team. I have a few quick notes before we get started. The webinar will last about an hour and that includes time at the end for questions. So feel free to type your questions into the control panel and I will answer them during the presentations. The next thing to note is that this webinar will be recorded and sent to all the registrants with the slide deck within 48 hours. You can also find this recording and all of our recordings on our YouTube channel, Early Growth. Now, before I pass this off to our speaker today, I'd like to tell you a bit about Early Growth. This is a quote from our founder, David Ehrenberg, and a few of the clients we've worked with. And here's a quick description of what we do. We're an outsourced finance and accounting firm. We work with early stage companies, helping them with everything from day-to-day accounting to financial forecasts to taxes and valuations. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelist. Donna Griffit is a corporate storyteller. She has worked globally for over a decade with Fortune 500 companies, startups, and investors in a wide variety of industries. She has consulted and trained clients in over 30 countries, helping them create, edit, and deliver verbal and written presentations, pitches, and messages. Donna has the ability to magically spin raw data into compelling stories that captivate audiences and drive to results. Throughout her guidance, clients have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Donna, thank you for coming here. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patty. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. If you're on the West Coast, I hope you're enjoying lunch as you listen. And if you're on the East Coast, only 2 more hours till you leave the office. So hang in there. I'll try to pass this hour for you in a fun and informative way. So yes, as Patricia said, I am a storyteller. I've been doing this for 15 years. I started off working with Fortune 500 companies and Fortune 100 companies all over the world, working with their tech teams, sales teams, C-suite on creating and delivering powerful messages. And in 2008, for obvious reasons, I pivoted to working mainly with startups. So today, I mainly work with startups on their investor decks, sales decks, website content. I also still do corporate work and work with individuals also building their messages. So let's talk about pitch for a second. If you were to walk down the street in San Francisco and ask somebody what a pitch is, then this would probably be the answer you'd get, straight to baseball. But if you think about it, there's a lot of similarity between a baseball pitch and a pitch that you're supposed to give, especially if you're trying to get a very important idea across. You want your message to be fast, directed at the audience. You want the audience standing up and taking notice, and for there to be a response, not just a bunch of people sitting with their heads down at their phone, like we see so many times during conferences. So also a pitch should have an element of fantasy, excitement, storytelling. And as a storyteller, it's very important for me to weave that element in there. So we're going to get into some concepts of storytelling as we talk about building a quick pitch. So I always tell people that I work with, founders on before they go to an investor meeting, that an investor meeting is like a first date. And for those of you out there still dating, think of it, this as a little bit of dating advice as well as some pitching advice. So if on your first date you start talking about your entire dating history, where you'd like to be married, how many children you'd like to have, there's a good chance you're not going to have a date with that person again. Just saying. When you have a 5-minute window or a 1-minute window or a 2-minute window, whether you're on the fly or you have a chance to present briefly on stage, it's more like a speed dating event. So in speed dating, if you're not familiar, 10 tables, usually the ladies are seated, the men circulate around. You have 5 minutes to talk to that person and see if you ever want to see them or speak to them again. I can say, maybe from experience, that those 5 minutes can be a very, very long time. So you don't want people sitting there waiting for you to finish. There is no way that in 5 minutes, or even probably 10 minutes, 8 minutes, you will be able to tell the entire story of your venture. So your job in a quick pitch is to intrigue the audience. Don't attempt to tell them the entire story. Make them want to continue on the conversation. Make them want to go on a second date with you. So how do we start? Well, the first thing you want to do, and so let's imagine, and we'll talk about shorter pitches as well in a little while, but let's imagine you have the opportunity to present an idea. Now, those of you that are actually working for companies, imagine yourself presenting an idea, but I'm going to aim this more towards startups. So startups, imagine you had the opportunity at a demo day or at a competition to get up, even at a conference, and present for 5 minutes. So you want to start off by introducing yourself. That may sound trivial, but I've seen people forget to introduce themselves and their company, and the audience should sit there going, who was that? What was their name? What did they do? And then after that, I want you to have your vision statement. Your vision statement is, as Silicon Valley investors call it out here, your North Star, your reason for being. Why are you doing what you're doing? Getting it out there. So what is it that you're doing? Where are you heading towards? It can be a brief, punchy statement. So it's not where you are now, it's where you're headed, the much bigger vision. And it's something that you really want to punch their guts with and make them go, whoa, that sounds exciting. It doesn't have to explain what it is that you do. This is the why, not the what. We'll get to the why in a little while. Now, if you have major traction, if you've raised a round, if you have big clients, you've closed any deals, you've closed major partnerships, you might want to state that up front. Don't wait for good news. Investors know how extremely difficult it is to close deals like this, and it's going to change the way that they listen to you if they know from the get-go that you've had that kind of traction. You might have won prizes, gotten accolades, had some interesting press. But unless your team looks like that, there is really no need to present the team at the beginning. Now, sometimes in the full-blown investor meeting, you will. I always say, look, there's 3 things that investors are listening for the entire time. They're listening for credibility, likability, and momentum. So you want what you're saying to inform any of those. So if your team really adds to your credibility from the beginning, then go ahead and start with the team. If there's somebody that, a serial entrepreneur, someone who's a leader in their field, people that have a true unfair advantage, then you can lead with it. But in 5 minutes, you probably want to wait on them as well. And starting off your 5-minute pitch, you either want to make your audience feel the pain or go, hallelujah, oh my God, this is so exciting, I can't believe you're going to do this. This is the best thing ever. How did nobody think of this up until now? So it's the stick or the carrot. Now, people will buy from you or invest in you or believe in your product, either because you are protecting them from something bad happening, which, most, let's say, cyber plays do, or because you're going to make their lives better than they are today, and it could possibly something new. Stick, carrot. You just have to decide what is the bigger motivator for you. You might be able to go both ways, and do you want to give it a negative spin? Do you want to give it a positive spin? What's more powerful for the audience? And the best way to tell your carrot or stick is through a story. Now, it's not just a story as an icebreaker. You really want to capture a story that is relevant to this. It could be your own personal story. So, for example, I'm working with a team that have created this innovative way of tracking hydration and heart rate. It's really quite astounding. So the founder comes from a military background and it was a professional athlete, a professional runner. So he could come from a very personal place and tell his story, and then what wasn't working for him, what was missing that he discovered, and then decided to start one. So how many founders has that happened to them? We've left our cushy jobs and gone on this crazy adventure to become a founder because we saw a better way of doing something. It could be something that affected someone you cared about. It could be something that affected the world at large. As we speak, Facebook is down, which is pretty crazy. I think they've been down for the past 3 hours. And that's quite disconcerting because we don't know if they were hacked. We don't know what's going on. But this is something that I'm sure if whatever they discover, a lot of startups are going to have a field day saying, see, this is something we could have prevented happening. So we want to think of a relevant story. Now, Mark Twain said, never let the truth get into the way of a good story. Now, I'm not suggesting that you lie. And of course, early financial growth will also talk to you about your numbers. We never want to fudge your numbers, of course. But what I'm saying here is you have the license, the poetic license to kind of shape your story to be that powerful. So I was working with a team that are enabling a layer of VR and AR. So you look through your phone and you can see exactly what's going around in your town or wherever you're visiting without doing any kind of search. And at first they started off talking to me about image splicing and deep learning and all these kind of crazy technological things because they were a very technological team. And then somebody said something, he's like, it's like the time we were in Tokyo. I said, oh, you came up with the idea in Tokyo? And you're thinking, oh, we have a good story brewing. And they're like, no, we didn't come up with an idea in Tokyo. We said that it's image splicing and deep learning and blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, stop. You came up with the idea in Tokyo. They kind of gave me a funny look and then they smiled because they got it. Because doesn't it sound sexier to say something like, I was roaming the streets of Tokyo, feeling lost in translation, wondering, what are these beautiful buildings I'm seeing? I can't read the language. There's no one I can even ask. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could just reach up with my camera and just in one click know what I was looking at? So do you think any of the investors checked their passports to see if they were in Tokyo before they started working on the idea or not? No, but it's a story that resonates with all of us. I mean, how many of you have been in a country that you didn't read the signage and you felt like you were missing out on something big? So since then, they've added the V.R. It's even more, but that was when they were first starting out. So you can take a story and polish it till it shines and give us just the essentials of it. Stories are memorable. Stories resonate. And by the way, you'll see in a minute, we're using a story within a story because the entire structure that we're giving of the pitch right now is the structure of a story. So our first chapter was the problem. Now, where do we go? Oh, 1 second before we get to the next part. This is just a list of potential problems that you might be solving, villains. So there's always going to be your Dr. Evil, and then there'll be a lot of mini-me's, and those are kind of features that you're looking at. But look at the last three: boredom, popularizing cultural trend, missing a great opportunity. Those are the carrots, not the sticks. It's not the villain that we're trying to beat over. It's the missed opportunity that's the real villain here. So you want to be able to think of the story that highlights that. And if you are educating the market in something entirely new, it's a challenge, but it's doable. Okay, I want to check in and see if there are any questions in the meantime. Patricia, anyone ask a question?
Hi, Donna. Not at the moment.
Okay, great. So we'll continue, guys. Please feel free as we're going along to put questions into the chat function, and I'll stop every few slides and answer them. So chapter 1, the problem. Chapter 2, the solution. So we found a hero for our villain, and this is your solution. This is what you do. And you are probably going to have to write the most difficult sentence you've ever written in your career. And that is your simple solution statement. We do X for Y by Z. We have a deep learning powered platform that enables image recognition in a split second, so you can see events, history, and opportunities right around you. I'm making it up from that team, what they could potentially be. So something that simple that everybody gets, whether they have a degree in computer science or cryptography or not. They must get it. Another way to look at your simple solution statement, Adeo Resi has the startup Mad Libs, where he says, my company is developing a defined offering to help a defined audience solve a problem with the secret sauce. Secret sauce is always a nice condiment to add on to your solution because it gives that extra spice, that extra twist, that extra unfair advantage that you have. So it might be that person on your team. It might be IP that you filed. It might be a certain technology that you've created that nobody else has. It might be industry experience. It might be a deal that you've closed. Whatever it is, you go ahead and let us know as soon as possible. And as soon as possible, you also want to get to an impressive demo. Steve Jobs could have stood for an hour talking about how great the iPad was, but the minute he lifted it up, we got it. Okay, we understood what he was talking about, and it just all kind of came together. So we want our audience to see, we're very visual creatures. We want our audience to see even faster what it is that we're doing. So create a demo. If you have a video or a clip, great, use it. I would take just the bit that shows your solution, not the whole problem, because you've just talked about it. And again, you're up in a 5-minute opportunity. So you want to give the demo piece actually probably the longest bit, maybe a minute up to a minute and a half. Now, you want to, if you don't have a video, create a narrative, create a day in the life, create like some screenshots. So let us see an actual user, how they would use this, how they would approach this. This is especially great when it's a very technological play. Let's say you're creating a DevOps tool. You know, anybody that's not a dev won't get the pain of that. So you can even create a story about a poor dev in the beginning with a problem, and then show how their life has gotten so much better now using your tool. So you can have a split story, start with the problem and then how their life got better, and then measure that. It could be a real client of yours. You can anonymize them if you're not allowed to use them, but walk us through the 6 steps of using. We want the investors to see how simple it is, how clear it is, how crisp it is, how great it looks. So just make sure that you're on that and you're doing it in a way that's like they get at the end, they're like, oh, I could use that, or I know people that could use that. That's simple enough. That looks great. Remember, you want it to look as great as your product. But the demo is probably, if you're the star of the show, it's your co-star. So then we start to move into the business side of things. So before I move into the business, I'll check in with Patricia. Any other questions come up about the solution or the problem?
Yes, we have some questions. So the first one is, do you have any stat stories showing that successful unicorn companies did the simple solution statement exercise and filled in this template? And then just to complement it says, what if you have too many problems you're trying to solve?
Okay, great. So I'll talk about the second one first, since the problem was first. So thank you. So if you that's what I said about there being a Dr. Evil and many me's. So the Dr. Evil is the big problem you're tackling. The mini me's are the features that are going to go along. So there's usually one big problem you're solving, and then along the way you might be solving an array of others. You want to go for the biggest ticket problem, the problem that's costing the most money or has the biggest market opportunity, even if at this point in time, you're not tackling it head on, okay? So you want to be able to show them the big problem that you will eventually get at. And then you can say, our flagship product is starting here. And that's okay if you're taking a bite out of the big problem. And then other things probably will fall into features. The only other case I would think of is there could be a Dr. Evil and his twin brother. So you're solving a problem for 2 different audiences. You're solving a problem for businesses, and you're solving a problem for their customers. So it's a B2B2C. So businesses have problems because they lack loyalty and they're struggling against Amazon. Users are looking for great deals. So they want to be able to, people will search for hours to find a coupon before making a purchase. But the problem is for those businesses, if they use Groupon, they're losing even more money, which is why, so one of my clients has created this great smart coupon solution that enables them to take control of their actual product and take control of their discounts and not have to give away half of it, which is what businesses do with Groupon today. So that's, just an example there. To address the first question or the second question as what unicorn companies can I think of that have used that? If you look for the best decks out there, there's a lot of sites that you can find that unicorns that have already raised lots of money have shared their actual slide deck. For the most part, if you go on, you will see a simple sentence that they describe what they did. Now, I don't expect you to, use the template exactly. It could be a little bit longer than that. The key is simplicity. The key is being able to explain it in a way that, yes, you can allude to the fact that it's ML powered, or that you have deep learning or an inference an inference engine. But I also have to understand, as a plain old person that's not a technologist, what it is that you're doing. That's the most important thing. Did I answer both those questions? Any follow-up questions or any others?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. So if there's any other questions, or if I didn't, then please do ask again. Okay, so now we're heading into chapter 3, or act 3 of our little 5-minute play, the business. So this is where you let them know how far along you are. Investors want to know things like MRR, ARR, monthly recurring, annual recurring revenue, or revenue to date if you're still very young. If you're not making money yet, you need to look at other metrics that show traction. It could be growth, engagement, partnerships that you've signed. By the way, pilots, get them paid from the get-go, okay? Because you'll garner a lot more respect and accolades from investors if you have even some money coming in than just people using your product for free. If you're bringing them tremendous value, I mean, you can go ahead and put a price tag on this pilot. They don't have to know that you're just starting out. Again, it's your story. You tell it. If you're going to be bringing them a valuable service to an enterprise and they've already agreed to the pilot, get some money in on there and just say, this is the price for the first 3 months, and then we'll revisit. So you always have that option to go higher. This could be IP. This could be patents that you filed. This can be regulatory issues. If you have FDA approval, anything that shows momentum, that shows that you've moved forward with this. So the more you have, the better. Now, of course, if at the beginning you've said major traction points, you don't necessarily have to repeat them here. Then the 3 most important things about the business that I want you to talk about: differentiation, what truly sets you apart from your competitors; monetization, how are you making money, or how will you be making money if you haven't activated your business model yet; what's the main revenue model, and what are some additional revenue streams you might be looking at. It's okay not to know 100%. It's okay not to know your projections, but you just want to give them an idea of what they're looking at, how they will be making money. And opportunization. I know that's not a real word, but it rhymes with monetization and differentiation. So, but what I mean here is, this is kind of the silver bullet slide. This is your secret weapon. It's not enough to just know your market size and that you have a huge market. That's awesome that you have a huge market. But what are the true opportunities, the trends and opportunities happening today that turn this into an urgent opportunity? What shows that this is something that absolutely is a must-have? Because you want to create a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out. Investors don't like to feel like they missed the train. So you want to show them that, this train is leaving the station with them or without them, and they're going to want to be on board. So it could be trends about growth in usage. It could be trends about, maybe Gartner came out with a study saying we need X, Y, and Z to happen in 2020 or else, and you fit right into that. It could be a regulatory change happening, like we had GDPR happen last May, and then we have the California Privacy Act happening next year. 2020 or 2021, and so how are you helping to get ready for regulatory or legislative changes? There might be an urgency, and people are looking for you. So whatever it is that shows that there's movement on here, it might be one of your competitors just received a huge funding round or was acquired by somebody who has another big nemesis. So that's a good signal that you might be on the way. And if you can show that you have a much more robust set of features, you might be well on your way to a big investment or to even an acquisition, even though we don't want to say that outright. Then we can put in the team if you haven't brought them in at the beginning. Now, when you only have 5 minutes, you want to speak about the team kind of as a whole, our team is made up of deep technology, business, design, marketing. We've got everything it takes to execute on this. You want to show that this is the team that's going to be able to really get this off the ground. Okay, I'm going to pause again for questions before we go to the final act of the play. Any other questions come up?
Not at the moment.
Great. So Act 4 is the moving forward piece. Again, 5 minutes, you've almost reached your end here. Now, You can have an ask slide if it's appropriate, depending on where you're presenting. There's all kinds of SEC regulations. Can you actually have an ask or not if there's not all accredited investors in the room? Just make sure you know. But you can even say out loud, we're now embarking on our seed round of $1 million, and we already have 250K in commitments for that. We'd love to talk to you later. But what I want you to end with is something that's going to stick with them, something that will inspire them, something that they'll remember. Too many times I see people prepping for a pitch event and then they give a great pitch and then they end with a, that's it. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Really? Yeah, you can do so much better than that. So if you've started with a story, end with a story, cap it off at the end and give them kind of a sense of, oh, okay, here's how this story ended. They're now using the solution and that looks great. Or take them on the much bigger journey. So you asked about the problem. What if there's many problems? So maybe you're now taking them on the journey, but this is just the beginning. We're going to be able to solve so much bigger problems like this and this and that, which is another multi-billion-dollar market. And we're on our way to the sky's the limit. Okay, so that could be good. You can end with a quote, something that kind of punches them in the gut. Quotes are brief and emotional, and it really helps people feel what you want them to feel. So that is your 5-minute structure and content. And I want to go on and give you some more pointers that for things that are important. Any questions about the structure and the content of the 5-minute?
We have one question. It says, how important do you view highly credentialed teams and advisors versus functional members?
So just to make sure I understood that correctly, so I'll answer two pieces to that. One, if you have highly credentialed people with a lot of experience, people with multiple exits under their belt, bring them up front. The people that should be on the slide are your executive team and your advisory board. You don't have to have your entire staff on the slide and talking about each person's resume. You can do a group shot if you want and say, supported by another team of 15. But the people that interest them most are the executive team and the advisors. I hope that addresses it. Anything else?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. So I promised that we'd also say, well, what if we have it shorter than 5 minutes? So, first of all, let's go longer. So if you have a full-blown investor pitch where you have like an hour meeting or even half an hour meeting, this is the structure for it, and it's actually pretty much the same structure, except you can go into many more details. So we start off with the need, or the challenge, or the problem, your proposed solution, the business plan of how you're going to get this off the ground, and then your vision for the future moving forward, and your ask. And I like to end with a slide I call key investment merits, or why us, why now? What are the 6 or 7 most important points that you made throughout this presentation, so that we kind of give them a refresher before we end the meeting. So what's cool about this is this structure, and this is the structure of a story dating back to Greek mythology and the Bible and Chekhov and Shakespeare. There's a certain structure to a story, and it's a structure that our brains are wired for thousands and thousands of years. Okay, so we are used to receiving things. So, think about it for a minute. Think about movies, an action adventure film. There are about 8 scripts out there, archetypal scripts that keep being written again and again and again. I'm not even talking about remakes of movies that were already made. So it's not that we don't know what's going to happen. Our brain kind of knows the superhero is going to fight the bad guy. Someone's going to get killed along the way. Someone's going to turn out to be a traitor. They're going to have big fights, and then justice will prevail, or there'll be an opening for a sequel. So why do we still spend the money and go see the movie? Because of the effects and the content and the creativity and the twist that might be within it. It keeps us entertained, but our brains are kind of cool knowing where we're going. Give people what they're used to. Oftentimes people say to me, oh God, not again, the problem solution. This is so 1976. Yeah, it's actually not 1976, it's 1976 BC or further back. So yeah, it works. it works for a reason. It's up to you to make it creative, to make it interesting, to make it captivating, but keep the structure in place. Same holds true if we go smaller, if we go to an elevator pitch. So there's 3 different kinds of elevator pitches. There's the classic elevator pitch, which is how long it would take you to go from the bottom floor to the top floor of a very tall building, about a minute or so. Now, so many times I see people get an opportunity. You have a minute to introduce yourself. They only have a minute. What do? Better talk as much as I can about the product. And then they miss that emotional connection. So don't skip that. Start off with the problem story. Just make it shorter. So instead of going the whole Tokyo thing, lost in translation, so one thing that frustrates the heck out of me is traveling to a foreign country and not being able to see where I'm going. Signs are not in English. I don't know if I'm being taken advantage of. I don't know if there's any cool parties happening right under my nose. And it's something, even in my hometown, I can walk down the street and not know what's going on. And that's why we've created Fringify. So you just make it shorter. Then get into your solution, your simple solution statement. If you're talking to an audience, don't ever try to show them something on your screen. If you're talking one-on-one, you can have a little demo or a little image already primed on your screen so you can show them what it looks like. And then you want to pepper it with 1 or 2 interesting things about the business or your achievements. Okay, and that's your minute. But a minute can be a long time. You can get a lot into that minute. So don't do away with the problem. Then there's the second type of elevator pitch is the handshake pitch. This is what happens at a networking event. So, tell me what you do. And the expectation is within 20 seconds, you've either told them and interested them or you've told them and bored the heck out of them and they've moved on. Don't hold them hostage. So in 20 seconds, you have to say this, no problem. Same thing, a line about the problem, a line about the solution. You can turn the problem statement into a question. So have you ever traveled to a country where you didn't read the language? Now, if they say yes, great, you can go with that and ask them what country and then give your solution statement. If they say no, you could say, well, let me tell you, it's pretty frustrating. I was in China and blah, blah. So again, you can do this simply and fast. The third kind is the eye blink pitch. This is if you see someone super important, you have a split second to grab their attention and knock their socks off and make them want to stay longer. So it could be your simple solution statement. It could be your vision statement. It could be just a value statement, like your unique selling point of something that you truly can bring value. And you can have a few of those. It doesn't have to be one. And what's beautiful about your elevator pitches is you can constantly change them up and play with them and see what works. Make it interesting for yourself. You might come up with something on the fly. You're going to become really good storytellers once you start doing this. And every team member should be able to pitch because you never know when you're going to get 2 pitching opportunities and at the same time, and you're going to have to send the CEO to one and the CTO or the CMO to the other. And the CTO should know how to pitch. Even though they spend most of their time coding, it's very important. Just like the CEO should be able to explain the technological parts. You will have a different kind of elevator pitch if it's for potential partners, potential clients, potential investors, or just regular Joes and Janes listening to you. So try to figure out who the person standing in front of you is. If you're at a conference, there might be a lot of different people coming in and out of your booth. And you want to kind of get a feel, like look at their name tag, what company, even ask them a question so you know how to gear it towards them and make the most of your minute. Questions up until now about the elevator pitch or the longer pitch?
No, not right now.
Great. Feel free anytime to chime in with questions and I'll stop for them. Slides. There is no excuse anymore for crappy looking slides. You don't have to invest a lot to make slides look great. Slides are a reflection of your products. They are your first glimpse into it. So when they see your slides, they're thinking, okay, the product looks that bad, really? So you really need to make them look good. There's all kinds of free resources that you can use. One is called Slide Bean, SlideBot. There's a new template service called Slide Forest that has all these templates for PowerPoints. Emaze. And you can also on Fiverr find slide designers that for very expensive will put some magic. Now, if you have a designer on staff or you work with a UI UX person, ask if they can give the slides a look and feel of your product. It might be worthwhile paying them a bit more to do that. because this is going to be a slide deck that will probably carry you through this round. Next round, it'll have the same design. It probably will change data, I hope, but you might, this will be yours to go with. Anybody ever feel like this poor guy want to commit suicide? Yes, I'm sure it's happened to all of us, especially those who've worked in organizations. So the problem is people tend to data dump. They will dump everything onto the slide because they're afraid of forgetting what they want to say. And it's like 8-point font, 50 bullet points. Everybody sitting there is thinking, you know, is it too late to become a yoga teacher or something? I can't be in this room right now. So don't do that, first of all. There should be one big idea per slide. I just finished a meeting before the webinar with a company in the UK, and we had done their deck, and then they went back and added a bunch of language to the slides. So I'm like, wait, what's going on there? And she's like, yeah, but what about if we send this out? You have to have two versions. You cannot use the version for the send out and the version for presentation, because the minute you overload your slides with text, you are competing with your own words. Basically what happens is there's 3 different channels that we take in information: our visual, our auditory, and our kinesthetic. When we read, the same part of our brain is activated as when we listen, the auditory part, not the visual. Our eyes are our camera for letters, but we have to decode the language, and probably everybody listening to me has English and maybe one other language to decode. But if I were to show you something right now in Mandarin or in Thai or in a language that you have no idea how to read, it would stay visual, but you wouldn't be able to read it. So the problem is, if it's the same part of the brain that's activated, we can't both read and listen at the same time. Which means if you put a ton of text on the slide, they're going to be reading because we've been trained since we were in school that if something's up there, we'd better read it. But they're missing out on hearing from you. And what's the point? This wasn't a business plan competition. This is a come in and speak to us. We want to hear from you. You are the star. So don't compete with your own words. Piggybacking on that, it should be the one big idea that grandma could understand. Or in the words of Einstein, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And this grandma insight came to me many years ago when I was teaching a workshop at Intel for a group of hardware engineers. And this was the slide that one of them got up to present. So I was in my early days, I still was a bit, when it came to things very technical, a bit intimidated. But I looked around the room to see if anybody else was looking like thrilled, and these were all hardware and developers too, and everybody was like, oh my God. Okay, so then he presents, and to make matters worse, it's like, well, the multi-1 gig LAN backbone of 10.1 gig VMAX and the SPI4P2 of the net processor is interspliced from the backplane to the CSI XL2 switch pipe. Like, he basically went through every single data point on the slide. I was just like, so I stopped him and I was like, thank you. That's really nice. Now, can you tell me what this means? And he looked at me with this kind of like, well, duh. Like, how are you not getting this? This is so clear. It's like, well, what it means is the multi-1 gig LAN backbone of, no. Okay, going on like I was a very problematic child explaining something to, I don't even talk to my 5-year-old that way. So I let him go for a second. I'm like, okay, let's try this again. Could you explain this to me so that my grandmother would understand? And he looked at me with like this renewed excitement and enthusiasm. He's like, you mean your grandmother's an engineer? And everyone laughed, and I had to disappoint him and say, no, they weren't. But let me ask you guys, if you've ever had a conversation with your grandparents or even your parents, unless they were engineers, about your startup, about your product. It took my mom 5 years to understand what I did for a living. I'm still not quite sure she gets it all the way, but at least she has a better idea now. So it's up to us to be able to explain to people what we do, whether they're from our realm or not. And that's why we talked about this simple solution statement before. And after some back and forth, I realized that all this guy was saying was, Grandma, we're doing much more in much less space. Grandma, once upon a time, computers took up this entire room. They were huge and clunky. Today, your smartphone is like a bazillion times faster than those computers and can do a lot more in a lot less. Isn't that cool? Now, granted, if you're in a room with very technological people, you can get a little geekier with them. And usually, like if you pass the first pass of an investor meeting, they will then set up a technological due diligence for you, and they'll bring in a technological expert to really deep dive into the technology. But that's the next step. Now, granted, in Silicon Valley, there are some very tech-savvy investors, and they get it. And they might ask you questions, and then you have permission to dig deeper into it. But don't have it as a, especially not in a 5-minute pitch. Because the bottom line is, it's all about them. People will buy from or work with people that make them feel smart, and they will run away from people that make them feel dumb. And if they feel like they're not getting it and you're not being generous explaining it, not in a childish way, but in a simple way, that's going to automatically push them away. And I've heard founders say, yeah, well, if they don't get what we're doing, we don't want them as investors. I'm not sure how far that attitude is going to get them. And I've seen in action, I've seen investors at panels say, could you explain that to me in layman terms? And so that does not look good if they have to ask you that. Questions, Patricia?
Yes, they had a question about, they asked if you could repeat the slides to the slides tools. So you mentioned
slide tools, yes.
Yeah.
Slide Bean, B-E-A-N, Slide Bot, E-Maze, like a maze with an E. There's a new one I saw out recently called Slide Forest. And also I would recommend F.E.A.R.com, which is Fiverr with 2 R's, and look up just graphic designers. They're very inexpensive. So most of these tools are either free or, very inexpensive monthly subscription if you want to take their powered by logo off. So highly recommend those. Feel free to reach out to me afterwards if you're not finding what you need. Other questions?
No.
Okay. So nearing the end, Q&A, you want to know your audience's questions in advance and have answers for them. Sound like how am I supposed to do that? Well, here's the good thing. People are pretty predictable and they ask the same question. So what I've done, if you go to my website, and I'll put the address at the end, under resources, one of my guides is the 100+ questions that investors will ask you. So what you can do is you can take the questions from there that are relevant to you, create answers, and really be ready to answer. So in the same way that you would practice your pitch before a competition, a conference, a demo day, or a meeting, and you'd review your pitch, review your answers to your questions so you have them fresh in your mind and you're able to answer inside out, especially about your numbers. Now, what if they ask you a question that's not on your list and you don't have the wherewithal to answer? It's okay to say, you know what, that's a great question. I don't have all the data in front of me. Can I get back to you? Usually the answer will be okay. And then you have a reason to continue on the conversation, which is definitely good. You want to be following up. Practice truly does make perfect. Actors, singers, athletes all go through a practice phase and really rehearse before going out and playing on the field or on the stage. Presenters will sometimes finish a presentation at 2:30 in the morning with an 8:30 meeting and not understand why it didn't go very well. It's not enough to just read through what you wrote. You have to speak it. You have to get up and do it. I would not do it in front of a mirror. It's too self-conscious. Rehearse in front of your family, in front of your team members, in front of a neighbor. And, heck, you're on a plane or a train, people don't have much to do. Ask if you can rehearse for them. Uber drivers, I've had people come to pitch say, I just was practicing with my Uber driver the whole way over. It doesn't matter, but the more you go through it, the more confident you start to feel, and the nerves dissipate, and you start to really get more confident about it. And you also pick up any mistakes along the way that you might have made. Speaking of fear, usually when people get nervous before a big presentation, they describe it as butterflies in their stomach, or maybe their heart beating fast. I call, the space between your heart and your belly, the tube of fear and terror, because that's usually where we're going to feel the nerves right before. So I often ask people when I'm in the room, I say, okay, so if you felt butterflies in your stomach last time you were nervous about a presentation, think of the last time you were really excited about something. Where in your body do you feel those nerves, that excitement? And usually the answer is butterflies in my stomach. Same thing. Yes, it is the same thing. Those butterflies are the same for fear and for excitement. It's just a matter of what we label them. If we label them, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I'm giving a speech in front of 300 people, those butterflies are sneaky little devils, and they're going to turn black and grow fangs and start, flying up and choking us, and our mouth is going to go dry, and our we're going to forget everything we're saying, no oxygen going to the brain, as opposed to, okay, oh, those butterflies, I'm feeling them. I'm about to give a speech in front of 300 people. This is so exciting. And those butterflies, they love a good party. They'll start putting on their Burning Man clothes and putting on some Tiesto and dancing, and they will fly, and they'll actually take you with them if you let them, if you don't push them away. And that can be the best fuel we have for the passion that we need to come through with. And that's what fear becomes: face everything and recover. I've been doing this for a long time. I've yet to see someone die of fright. There's always a first time, granted. But most likely, and think back to a time where you were prepping for a presentation and you were really nervous about it, and then it went really, really well. And you were just kind of floating, and everyone was kind of congratulating you. Enter the room with that sensation and that feeling that everything's going to go great. And it is going to give you that boost you need at the beginning. And that leads to my last point of the webinar: rock in the room at your best. They don't know that you were stuck in traffic and were almost late. They don't know that you were up for 2 hours in the middle of the night with a major bug in your system. They don't know that you just had an argument with your partner. All they know is the person that walked in the room is who you are. And let me tell you a secret: they really, really, really want to like you. They want to like you, and they want to like your product. But like I said, it's three things: credibility, likability, and momentum. We need to have the three in order to move forward with an investor. So show up at your best. Leave all the crap of life outside, in your car, in the lift, on your bike, in the bus. It'll wait for you. And walk in at the best version of yourself. You never know who's in the elevator with you. You never know who's online for coffee with you. You never know who's listening to your angry conversation. You want to bring it, because there's no second chance for a first impression. And if any of you have ever interviewed, you could probably tell me that you knew within the first 30 seconds if this person had a chance of moving on or not. And usually the answer is yes, you did. Okay. Questions before we sum things up?
They're just asking if you can share later on the 100 questions investors ask.
Yes. So if you go to my site here, which is donnagriffit.com, there's a tab called Resources. Under Resources, you'll see Guides, and there's about 6 guides there. Also, what we talked about today, there's the ultimate guide for the quick pitch for a competition deck. Basically, everything we talked about today in that article. There's one for the investor deck, one for the sales deck, and then there's the questions are there as well. Any other questions that anybody wants to ask?
Not at the moment.
Let's give him a minute. So this is just to let you know a way to stay in touch with me. Any of these mediums, I do a lot of writing and content. I also have a video course. If you look on the website on donnagriffit.com, under course, you can join the course. And if you use the code DGVIP, it gives you a 25% discount. So you can, Patricia, you can write that for them in the chat, DGVIP, so Donna Griffit VIP. Any other questions?
There's no questions, but
Okay.
if I will send out an email with the recording and the presentation, so they will have access to all this information.
Great.
And in the next 48 hours, I will copy you in case they want to reach out to you, and they can ask you any questions then.
Fabulous. Be happy to hear from you. So I want to wish you all lots of luck with your venture, with your pitching, with building your company and making your dreams come true. And I'm here if I can help.
Thank you, Donna, so much. If anyone has any questions, this is the moment. If not, we'll sign out. I think we're good, Donna.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Patricia, for hosting. Take care. Good luck, everyone. Bye.